Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please. If I can have your attention, please. Good evening. And welcome to the 2013 National Bike Summit. So my name's Andy Clark. I'm president of the League of American Bicyclists, and it's my very distinct pleasure to welcome you to Washington, D.C. On your way into dinner this evening, you may have seen a number of videos playing. These are videos from the sponsors of the summit, all of whom are shown on the screens right now. You'll see those videos again, but I want to take a moment to thank all the sponsors for whom we're extremely grateful and without whom the summit wouldn't be the event that it is. So thank you to all the sponsors of the summit. Of course, I also want to say thank you to you all. Considering there's no transportation bill in Congress this year, we're absolutely delighted that there are more than 750 people from all 50 states, the District of Columbia, 3 Canadian provinces who are here this evening. Go Canada. Something else is different this year. 12 months ago, I stood here with my colleagues Tim Blumenthal from Bikes Belong and Jeff Miller from the Alliance for Biking and Walking, and we were excited about the prospect of uniting our 3 organizations into one. Now that hasn't happened, I know you know that, and while that may have been a disappointment, a couple of really good things have come from it. First, we remain committed, all of us, working together to dramatically increase cycling and improve cyclist safety in the United States. We want to see 5% of trips being made by bike in this country by 2020, and we want the number of cyclists killed and injured in traffic crashes to be more than halved over that same time period. And ultimately, that's why we're here together in Washington, D.C. this week. The second good thing that happened is that I believe all 3 of our organizations have learned a lot about who we are and what we stand for. As you registered, or perhaps as you took part in the Women's Bicycling Forum, which alone had 375 participants during the day today, or as you look at the summit program or the backdrop behind me, you might have noticed a slightly different look about the League. Yes, there's a new logo, but there's also a change in the League that goes much deeper than that. We've taken a hard look at our programs, our products, and our messages. We've looked closely in the mirror, and we've asked what we really stand for and who we are. And with the help of some really smart and creative people at the Language Department in New York City, we're changing the face of the League, and we want to share some of that with you. Of course, we still have a fundamental belief in the remarkable simplicity and the beauty of the bike and its ability to solve problems and transform individuals, communities, and the nation. We still celebrate the bike as an icon of freedom and discovery. Equally fundamental to the League is that we are bicyclists, everyday people that ride bikes, working together to make a better America. And that's who you are as well. In fact, let me see. Wave your hands and make some noise if your club or you or your shop or your advocacy group is a member or affiliate of the League. Now, individual members of the League, and it's not a pitch, believe me, I'm not doing the membership director's job here. Just, if you're a member of the League, individual member, give me a wave, give me a shout. If you're one of our instructors, League cycling instructors, give me a shout, give me a wave. All right. If you serve on one of our advisory councils or committees, the New Equity Advisory Council, the Bicycle Friendly America Advisory Council, the Women Bike Advisors, give me a wave, give me a shout. Let's hear some noise. And finally, our ultimate volunteer leaders, the current and past members of the Board of Directors of the League. Please stand up. And thank you. Look around the room. We are the League, together. Now, if you've been part of the League, for a while, you'll recognize the inspiration for our new look. Our rebranding honors and draws upon our storied past. It builds on the knowledge and experience of generations and reuses those elements of the 133-year-old logo of the League of American Wheelmen. But the new League also has a modern edge, and we are most definitely moving forward with a commitment to serve the new, diverse, and growing ranks of bicyclists across the USA. The logo, our symbol, is the wheel, essential for movement, and the three wings that allow us to soar represent the promotion, advocacy, and education programs which we've combined to create momentum. These are the words, the ideas, the emotions, the promises of the League moving forward. And armed with a board and staff commitment to celebrate and better reflect the diversity of bicyclists and bicycling, guided by a newly created Equity Advisory Council, hanging on for dear life onto the tail of the Women Bike Initiative, we have to be the League of many, many people, many faces, many backgrounds. For too long, perhaps, we've empowered only the strong and fearless rider. And now we're committed to empowering everyone that wants to ride a bike. Our education programs will better reflect this moving forward. The information we have is too good and too empowering not to share as widely as we can. Our programs, especially the Bicycle Friendly America programs, give people the ability to act, to be actively involved in shaping the destiny of their lives and their communities. The BFA program is the roadmap, the content, the key to improving the health of individuals, communities, and the nation. And the League is all about people, our members, the clubs, the volunteers, the advocates, advocacy groups which comprise the organization and our movement. Our human-powered League is strong and plays a vital role in our movement because of the people that are engaged and involved. We'll tell their stories, your stories, in a new look American Bicyclist magazine. We're striving always to be a trusted resource, and our new website that we'll launch later this month will enable you to actually find information on it. It's there on the current site, but I can't begin to tell you how excited the staff are to be filling the pages of a new, navigable, and gorgeous-looking website. And when you get a chance to look around the pages, you'll see a new look and a new outlook about the League. On Sunday, the board adopted a comprehensive set of position statements on a wide range of topics, including education and encouragement and facilities, bike facilities. Spoiler alert, we like them. That will make it clear that this is not your father's or your grandfather's League of American Bicyclists. You'll even be able to find those positions on the new website. That makes us joyful. Something else would make me joyful? There we go. That makes us joyful. A lot about bicycling makes us joyful, and honestly, we don't often say that enough, and we don't reflect that often enough until today. We're joyful about the potential for and the future of bicycling in America. We're excited about the future of the League and our programs, and we're proud to connect the Bicycle Friendly America program, the Summit, the Bike Month activities, Women Bike, Smart Cycling, and our advocacy work, especially the Advocacy Advanced program we work on with the Alliance, with the League. And we're honored to work with you to bring them to life. So the League staff and board invite you to join us on this journey, on this ride that starts tonight. And there's honestly no better way to get started on that journey than to hear from our first speaker this evening. The Honorable Ray LaHood is the 16th Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation, appointed by President Obama in January 2009, and his impressive resume and record of outstanding public service includes 14 years representing Illinois' 18th District in the House of Representatives, and time as a state legislator, legislative aide, and public school teacher. You all know Secretary LaHood. You follow him on Twitter. You have an RSS feed to his Fastlane blog, and you forward Streets blog articles, you know you do, about him to your coworkers, your family, and your friends. He's been the most accessible, open-minded, progressive, and truly multimodal of any transportation secretary in the last 25 years that I've been here. And to me, the measure of the man and his importance to our movement is that he's probably the first and only transportation secretary I've met who keeps talking about bikes after we've left the room. In fact, just last week, he was challenging our friends at AASHTO, the state highway transportation agencies, to step up and do more for bikes and pedestrian safety. That's impressive. Mr. Secretary, welcome to the National Bike Summit, and thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Andy, thank you, and thanks to all of you. I asked Andy how many years ago he came, when the first bike summit was. It was 13 years ago. There were 120 people. Tonight there are 750 people. You've come a long way in 13 years. Thank you for coming to Washington. Your visits here really make a difference. And this is my 5th visit as the Secretary of Transportation. I've never missed one of your summits. And I'm really... And I guarantee you this, whoever my successor is, you'll not have a Secretary of Transportation stand on the table and speak to you. That'll never happen again. That did make me famous. You all made me famous. When I first got this job, Earl Blumenauer called me, a dear friend from Congress. He and I served together and worked together, traveled together, and we became good friends. And he asked me if I would come to his office and talk about his vision for livable and sustainable communities, something that he had worked on for years, and the importance of really developing a program at DOT. And that really was my inspiration. And I know that Earl has been an inspiration to all of you, that elected officials can have a vision, can gather people around them, can rally the country, and really make a difference. Earl, you've made a difference. Thank you for always hanging in there. Stand up. Stand up. Earl has made a difference in Congress. People know who he is and what he stands for. And I know that all of you in this room know who he is and what he stands for. He's been a leader. He's been a real visionary. Many of you in this room are visionaries. I want to say a special thanks to a very dear friend, Commissioner Jeanette Sedekon, for all the good work. Stand up, Jeanette. Stand up. I know you've already spoken. What Jeanette has done in New York, and for those of you that aren't from New York, again, a visionary, made a difference, has stood up. She's had a great mayor to back her up, and that's very important. And also to John Burke and Bruce Katz, thank you for talking about the economic benefits of cycling, and thank you for all of your leadership also. Let me just say a few words about a few things that I think are important, and then I'll be happy to see if there are some questions that you might have. We have really tried to promote cycling over the last 4.5 years that I've been in this job by promoting livable and sustainable communities. And Sean Donovan and Lisa Jackson and I traveled around the country on a little tour talking about how we were working together and cooperating together. We went to Chicago and Dubuque, Iowa, and Denver. While we were in Denver, we helped then Mayor Hickenlooper inaugurate the bike share program, one of the best bike share programs in the country. And while Mayor Fenty was mayor of Washington, we helped him really fund and inaugurate the bike share program here in Washington. A really good program, a very popular program. And I was just with Secretary Salazar in Colorado, inaugurating a biking and walking trail in one of the most pristine and beautiful areas of Colorado, really in the world. And we've done this all over the country because this is what Americans want. They want to be able to enjoy the great outdoors. They want to be able to bike. They want to be able to have walking and biking paths. And we're proud of the fact that we made that happen over the last 4.5 years. The president said to me a year or so ago that he ran into somebody at an event, and the person said something about Ray LaHood, and the president said, "Well, you must be a cyclist." And the fella or the lady said, "Yeah, I'm a cyclist." We've made a difference, but we've done it together. We really have. And the development of bike share programs, the development of walking and biking paths, the development of really cycling has been a part of your vision. We need to continue the momentum. We can't let up. I know that many of you are going to be visiting your members of Congress, both your congresspeople and your senators. And you need to talk about your passion and why this is important. And why now that there are communities all over America getting into bike share programs, getting into walking and biking paths. You've all been the leaders in that. You deserve the credit for it, for helping communities really take off. You've been way ahead of the politicians, not way ahead of Earl, but way ahead of most politicians. You really have been. And it's been a great honor for 4.5 years to be a part of an administration that shares your vision and takes your lead and has become a part of a country that really considers cycling and walking and all of these activities very, very important. We have been proud supporters of Bike Share, providing over $5 million through our FTA Bus Livability and Transit Parks program to help cities build bike share systems that link up to public transportation. And our very own Capital Bike Share celebrated its 2nd anniversary in September and served over 3 million riders. Think of that. 3 million, right here in Washington, D.C. Bike Share in D.C. and the suburbs now has 18,000 annual members using 1,500 bikes. Since day one, this administration has made livability a priority, and biking and walking, and making sure that it happened. We used our Tiger program in an effective way. Through the Federal Highway Administration, we have a record $3.8 billion in bicycle and pedestrian projects nationwide. $3.8 billion in 4.5 years. We are very proud of that. We wouldn't have done it without all of you. Under Tiger, we awarded nearly $130 million specifically for bike and pedestrian projects. In Houston, we helped fund a project that will eliminate gaps in the bike grid and provide travelers a great alternative to sitting in traffic. In Northwest Arkansas, yes, in Arkansas. Anybody from Arkansas? Yeah, well, you know, we broke ground on the last section of the Razorback Regional Greenway Parkway. This bicycle and pedestrian network serves as a model for how livability promotes economic development. In Dubuque, Iowa, we celebrated the completion of the historic Millwork District. In Dubuque, Iowa, IBM moved 1,500, what I call young people, between 25 and 40, into the community. They took an old Penny's building in downtown Dubuque, they fixed it up, and I asked the CEO one time when I met him, "Why did you pick Dubuque?" Easy answer, he said, the most livable community, one of the most livable communities in America. And for what we did with our investments in an old millwork area where we fixed up buildings, HUD came in and provided affordable housing, we fixed up streets, IBM moved these people in. This is economic development. This is opportunity, and it's being done all over America. Let me just say that one of our priorities over the last 4.5 years has been safety. Many of you know about that. We've really promoted distracted driving, and you know what a menace it is. And you shouldn't be doing it. I don't have to tell anybody in this room that you can't text and ride a bike, but you also can't text and drive a car. And many people think they can do it, and they can't. But our work isn't finished. In 2011, and this is what I want to emphasize tonight, in 2011, bicyclist deaths increased by nearly 9%. We have to do better. We can do better. All of us must be vigilant when it comes to safety, whether it's in our car, on a bike, or on foot. We also need to continue to invest in modern infrastructure that takes bikes into consideration. And we need to develop new standards to help us build that infrastructure. And we're going to address this. We need your help on this. We're going to address bicycle safety head on. We're going to pull from all of our resources to solve our safety challenges. Our policy experts, our researchers at NHTSA, which is a great safety organization, our engineers and the Federal Highway Administration are all working together. More importantly, we want to be sure that the cyclist community is behind us. And as a part of our ongoing efforts, we will partner with the cycling community, all of you, to hold 2 bike safety summits this spring. We want to do the first one in April. We want to really highlight bicycle safety, and we believe by holding a summit and gathering all the experts together and make sure that communities understand that you need bike lanes, you need to protect cyclists, you need to make sure they're safe while they're bicycling, and we need to really highlight that. So we want your help on this. We believe bicycle safety has to be one of our top priorities. It will be, and we look to all of you to be helpful. What we really hope to do is to create a standard guide for how we build modern streets, bridges, and highways that keep everyone safe, including cyclists. So, if you're called upon, we're going to have one of these cycling safety, bicycle safety summits in April. We're trying to figure out where's the best place to have it. But it's not going to be in Washington, okay? I'm sorry for all you D.C. people. Now, we want to go out to the country where we know that people really have a vision for this and people really care about safety, and not that people here in Washington don't, because they do. And my wife and I, Kathy's here tonight, my wife and I cycle on the weekends, but we usually go on the C&O Canal or other places. Sometimes we go along the Parkway and over to Alexandria. We're blessed in this area with some great places to cycle. But we need your help on this. This is going to be our priority, and this will continue, and we'll make a difference, and we'll bring down deaths on our part by really working hard with communities to make them understand how important it is to protect bicyclists when they're on the roadways. And whatever you can do to be helpful to us. Maybe Andy, what we should do is have a little lottery and somehow pick the city where we'll have our first summit. I don't know. You got a lot of other things I know you want to do it this weekend or this week. But anyway, if you can help us find a good place to do it, obviously we'd love to have your suggestions. So I don't know if I'll be addressing this summit again as the Secretary of Transportation. I think some of you have heard that we're going to be moving on, and once the President decides who the next Secretary will be, then we'll move on to some other adventures. But we'll never forget all of you and what you have done in your communities. to improve the communities. And we won't forget about your vision. And we want to continue to stay in touch with you and really continue to make a difference. But what a ride. 4.5 years with all of you. And you've made a great difference. You really have. And we appreciate the partnerships that we've had with so many of you in your communities and what you've done to improve your communities, not only for yourselves, but for the next generation. I talk a lot about the next generation and the next generation of transportation. You have promoted the next generation of transportation. Kathy and I have 10 grandchildren, and I think this Christmas we bought, I think, 4 bikes. It just about broke us. Four new bikes for our grandchildren. And the look on their face on Christmas Eve when they saw that new bike, you just can't capture it. It's magnificent. And to teach children at a young age about cycling and about safety and about good health and the good health that comes from cycling, it's extraordinary. So we've had a great ride together. I've appreciated all of what you have done, and I hope we can stay in touch and keep the momentum moving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You want to do a few questions? Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, thank you, Mr. Secretary. So, a couple of questions. We asked via Twitter and Facebook for some ideas for questions. It included Andy Bike saying, "Will you stay? Will you stay? Will you stay?"
That's why I brought Kathy LaHood. The answer is no.
Okay, all right.
No, okay. No. Now, if she were to leave the room, I might, well, maybe, we'll see, but no, the answer is no. Can I introduce Todd Solomon? Todd, stand up. Todd is the guy that does Fast Lane. He's the one that takes care of making sure that you all... He takes care of a lot of our social media. I wish, look at it. I was told by our public affairs people, it's not all that bad to say that you don't really do it yourself, because a lot of people don't do it. So Todd gets the credit. Todd, thank you for all you've done.
So in that 4.5 years, Mr. Secretary, what would you say has changed the most? What dynamic, what demographic, what's changed that has helped create the momentum for cycling that you've seen, other than the good offices of yourself?
Well, no, what I said earlier I think is true. I think all of you, 750 people here in Washington, many who probably wanted to come, and when we've gone around the country and had opportunities to inaugurate bike share programs, the people we meet, when we were in Colorado recently with Secretary Salazar, a bunch of cyclists came out to help us cut the ribbon on this beautiful biking area. I think it's the momentum that you all have created. I'm not just saying that. I think it's true. And I know that if it were possible, you could double the size of the number of people in this room, but you all are the real committed ones, and I encourage you to keep committed. I believe this. I believe you're way ahead of the politicians on this. And in some instances, you're way ahead of the community leaders that you elect to serve in your communities. You need to keep nudging them, keep moving them along. And you've made a difference, but I know you can do more and will do more. But I think it's this organization. I really do. And the momentum around the country. And I think, the idea that Mrs. Obama has promoted about exercise and how healthy it is to exercise. I mean, you could adopt that same theme. I mean, we talk about cycling in a way, that it improves communities. But think of what it does for good health and the advantage that people have as a result of this kind of exercise. So I give a lot of the credit to the people in this room, the leadership, and I meant what I said about people like Jeanette and Earl and others who've really who believed in it and just kept talking about it. 13 years ago, the 120 people that gathered here, and look, it's like the fishes and loaves. Any of you believe in that? Some of you do. Well, you've multiplied, okay? That's the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
We will help you with the summits.
Yep.
And you have a standing invitation to return to the National Bike Summit any year you choose. We're delighted to have you as our guest. And thank you very much for all that you have done for us. It's been an amazing ride for us, too. And your leadership has been extraordinary. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.
You're going to stick around to... Now I want to invite to the stage Sarah Ryder from Saris Cycling, who is not only one of our sponsors, but has a special presentation of a poster contest. So Sarah, come on up.
Thanks, Andy. Secretary LaHood, you're a tough act to follow, but luckily I'm pleased to be here and I'm pleased to be talking tonight about the next generation of cyclists. We started the poster contest as a way to connect with the youth in America, to get them to start thinking about and communicating the benefits of the bike. In 2012, we reached over 6,500 students across the country in 25 states who contributed posters, and we're pleased that the winner is here. On behalf of our partners and the Saris Cycling Group, it's my great pleasure to congratulate and introduce the winner of the 2012 National Poster Contest from Mallard, Iowa, a town of 300 people. Please join me in welcoming Isabel Gert.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Come on, Isabel. How are you? You going to say something? Yeah, good. Then you know what? Let's take this easel up here so they can. Look at it, you're getting a standing ovation. That's pretty good. I'm going to set this up here, okay, so they can see it.
I would like to thank my 5th grade teacher who allowed the opportunity for me to enter the poster contest. I would also like to thank Saris for the bike helmet, the bike, and this trip to DC. I can't wait to ride my bike in the summer. I mean, yeah. And I think you should attend the RAGBRAI in Iowa.
Now, explain what your poster's about. But you got to. You want me to hold it here? So there we go.
We had to put on our poster, "Bicycling takes me places." So I decided to do like a globe and put like a road on it because it's taking you everywhere. And yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Isabel, and to your family. Thanks for bringing her here. And they're going up to Capitol Hill tomorrow and Wednesday as well. So they're all part of the summit and doing the lobbying as along with the rest of you. So thank you very much for doing that. I believe, is it Congressman King you're visiting?
Good luck.
As you say, Sarah, a difficult act to follow. But There's no better person to follow than Jeanette Sadiq-Khan, who is the first of 3 speakers who I'm going to introduce. They're going to come up and say a few words and then join us in the comfy chairs and have a brief conversation. Jeanette will be followed by John Burke and Bruce Katz, who I'll introduce in just a second. But Jeanette Sadiq-Khan is the New York City DOT Transportation Commissioner and another truly inspirational leader, as the Secretary mentioned, in our field. The change that's been underway over the last several years in New York City is really extraordinary, and the benefit of her work is being extended way beyond New York City because of her work as president of the National Association of City Transportation Officials, as chair of the TRB's Committee on Big City Issues, and in the past as deputy administrator of the Federal Transit Administration. Tons of credentials, and an absolutely inspiring speaker. Jeanette, come on up and let the crowd know just what's going on in New York City.
Well, thank you. It is wonderful to be here at the Bike Summit. I don't think I've ever had a tougher act to follow. And it is wonderful to be here also on stage, not only with Andy Clark, and he's giving you a great sense of the future of this organization and the importance of cycling in this country. And I will talk a little bit about that. But I also want to recognize, also here on stage, is one of my personal heroes, Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood, who we are so fortunate to have such a courageous, forward-looking, innovative, street-smart transportation secretary. And I want to thank him for all that. And he not only stands on tables and delivers that message, but he actually goes to community after community, not only talking about the importance of cycling, policies that are supportive of cycling, but actually bringing the funding, the dollars and cents to make it happen. And it is with great regret that we see his passing. And I know we'll have another transportation secretary, and I'm sure they'll be fine. But really, there's going to be nobody like Ray LaHood. And he is an incredible leader. And in recognition of that leadership, and it's not a new bike, and so, you know, there's not that excitement of the Christmas Eve presentation. But in recognition of that leadership, I am happy to present the Secretary with an authentic New York City street sign.
Thank you. Pretty good.
So we're truly in the fast lane now. And I talked to Kathy, and she told me that any number of the grandchildren would be fighting for that. But I also want to let you know that when you come to New York next, we will figure out what street you want to put this on. I think Prospect Park West is a good candidate. So, thank you. We have talked a lot about the role of cycling, and I also really want to thank Andy and his team for putting together such a terrific conference. I mean, each and every year it just gets better and better. And you're seeing all of the world-class projects that are being built in communities, you know, that all of you live in and all of you have made possible. And I think it's a really exciting time in terms of transportation development and urban planning. And so, you know, it is a wonderful moment. I want to focus my remarks really on some recent findings about the economic development benefits of cycling and the role that they play in the economic health and the attractiveness of cities. You know, we've talked a lot about the role of cycling in terms of public health, right? And we know also that every street that has a bike lane on it is 40% safer for all of the users on it. So we're not talking about just, you know, making streets safer for cyclists. We're talking about making streets safer for everyone. And that is really a huge part of what's going on. We could talk about the health savings. We could talk about the economic impacts of climate change and cycling. We could talk about the green dividend, you know, that comes from addressing the high cost of cars and importing oil. But what I really want to talk about, and you know all of that, I want to talk about some of the more immediate effects and really tangible and easily discerned facts about cycling's benefits. And in New York, we have moved forward with analyzing the micro-level retail and economic performance of bike lanes and versus those streets that actually don't have them on them. And we've analyzed sales tax receipts on streets where we've installed these bike lanes and tracked their performance against how they've done on other streets in adjacent neighborhoods. And the findings are really astonishing, not perhaps to you, but I think to others. And I think it's an incredibly important quiver in our advocacy moving forward. On 8th and 9th Avenue, how many of you have been to 8th and 9th Avenue and seen that? Oh, excellent, great, great. So that was where we put in the nation's first protected bike lane. And we put that in 2007, and 3 years later, what have we seen? A 50% increase in sales tax revenues and receipts on the avenue. That is 16 times, something like that, the borough-wide numbers. We've seen the same thing on Vanderbilt Avenue in Brooklyn. We've seen the same thing on Columbus Avenue, where now commercial vacancies are at 0 with the new bike lane. We have seen this all over the city where we've put in these protected bike lanes. And it is not surprising that more and more businesses are finding and figuring out that bike access provides easier access for their customers. And the bottom line is that it's just better for business. It improves the retail setting of a street. Another major finding on cycling and economic development is the number of cities that can be seen investing in cycling infrastructure. In 2007, Mayor Bloomberg announced Plan YC, which is this long-term sustainability and infrastructure investment plan. And it highlighted that the city's economic performance depended on the mobility and livability of the city. And it specifically addressed cycling as a key part of the city's economic development strategy. And you're seeing new economy companies like Facebook and Google and Foursquare and others that rely on newer generations of highly skilled people, and they have taken up the call. They've championed new bike lanes. They have championed bike share. And survey after survey talks about the fact that the younger people are less interested in driving and car ownership, and they want other options to get around. So we're talking about the future of city streets. We're talking about a comprehensive economic development strategy. Mayor Emanuel of Chicago adopted the same idea as Mayor Bloomberg, and he said that bike lanes were an integral part of the city's economic development strategy. He went so far as to say that he expected to build a superior bike lane network. I know, right? And he not only threw down New York, he also threw down Seattle. And he said that, you know, he was going to start, I know, a hiss. He was going to attract Seattle's high-tech workers. So, not surprisingly, Mayor McGinn responded. And he responded last month saying that Seattle had an effective bike network, and he was going to ensure that he kept that migration from happening. So I think it just points out that it's harder and harder to find an American city that is not prioritizing cycling, that is not looking to build in the kind of safety and access improvements that are critical for a city. You can go down the list of cities that have clearly stated cycling strategy, and it's most of the major urban areas in this country. It's in Portland, and we have the leadership of Earl Blumenauer to thank for that. And, you know, he was the guy years and years ago when this was not a politically popular thing to do who stood up and talked about how important that was. We're seeing that in San Francisco. How many people from San Francisco here? Excellent. We're seeing that in LA. Anybody here from LA? We're seeing it in Austin. All right. Minneapolis. Memphis. All right. And Indianapolis, and we have the mayor of Indianapolis here, Mayor Baylor. So thank you for being here. We're seeing it in Boston. We're seeing it in Philly. There are even signs in Atlanta and Charlotte. So, and I'm sure I'm leaving others out. Who am I leaving out? See? It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Indianapolis. So I'd like to say that we've reached the tipping point where our leaders are basically saying what's good for Trek is good for America, and that's a good place to be.
So with that, let me introduce John Burke, the president of Trek, who I know you all know, has a stake in this, obviously. He is now not only the president of Trek, but a published author, and his book, One Last Great Thing, is a very moving story of his relationship with his dad that shows another side of John Burke. But tonight we're going to see the business side of John Burke, president of Trek.
Thank you. Andy, thanks for having me. I want to thank everybody for being here. I think the Secretary said it very well. Much of the progress we've made in the past 13 years are the people who show up here year in and year out. And people who are here make a big difference. I want to talk a little bit about tonight's theme, which is bikes mean business. And I just have a couple of thoughts on this. Is when you go to see your Congress people this week, one of the things that's changed over the last 13 years from when we started here is bikes really do mean business. The amount of people that Trek employs, Quality, SRAM, Specialized, you name it, there's a lot of people at the manufacturing level that are employed in America today that weren't employed 13 years ago. If you go down to retailers, and there's so many great retailers who have made a difference in creating a bicycle-friendly America, but not only have they made a big difference in creating that America, they employ a lot of people. And that is an amazing statistic. It is a great story to share with your elected representatives. The second thing has been talked about a lot today, and Madison is a great example of it, is it's really good, bicycles are really good for business because bikes bring a vitality to the city. You can see it here with the bike sharing program in DC. We see it in Madison with bike sharing, we see it with bike lanes, we see it with bike facilities. Whenever somebody comes in to look at Trek, a prospective employee, Madison really is a great selling point because it's bicycle friendly. The Secretary talked about IBM, he talked about Dubuque. You hear these stories all over the place, and that's a great story to share with your elective representative. The last thing I think that's really key when you're talking to people over the next couple of days about bikes in business is when you talk about business, you usually talk about revenues and you talk about costs, and at the end of the day, you try and make a profit. And when you take a look at bicycles, you talk about benefits, all the things that cycling does that very few other things do. And I'm talking about what the bicycle does for congestion. Every single major city in America faces it. What cycling does for the environment, it really is amazing. And really what cycling does for health. And if you haven't gotten the latest Time magazine, on the way home, pick up Time magazine. It has perhaps the greatest article written on health. And all of us in this room advocate for a very simple solution for all three of those things. Now, Jeanette went through it, and we've come a long way. And it used to be Portland, it used to be Boulder, but now it's places like New York, it's places like Washington, D.C., where there are dedicated bike lanes between the White House and Capitol Hill. And if somebody would have said that at the first bike summit 13 years ago, you would have said they were nuts. And that's been done. It really is amazing. But I really think the best thing that we have going for us is the opportunity of the future. We've come a long way here, but the reality of the deal is this, is if you take a look at mode share here in the U.S., Bicycles represent 1.4% of mode share. In Holland, it's 25%. In the city of Copenhagen, it's something like 35%. We have a long way to go. And the only way we're going to get it is to ask. And I think Secretary LaHood said it very well. People in this room are leaders. And if we're really going to get to 5% by 2020 or 2025, the only way it's going to happen is if people in this room go back to their communities and you grow your network. That's the way it can get done. I really believe democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people who show up. And this group has showed up here, and you have made a great difference. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And our last panelist, who I think, again, if you'd have thought 13 years ago that we'd have the vice president of one of the most progressive and inspiring and thoughtful think tanks on policy in the country at our summit, we would have been shocked as well. Bruce Katz is that man. He's the head of the Metropolitan Policy Program, which promotes policy ideas for improving health and prosperity, which I think we're all about. A strong congressional background, and it's, Bruce, really a pleasure to have you here to talk about the American city.
Well, thanks, Andy. And, you know, Jeanette called me a couple weeks ago and says, I really want you to come and talk at this bike summit. I said, you know, the last time you asked me to do something like this was with David Byrne when his book came out, and Earl was there, right? So we go to the museum, and David Byrne comes out and gives a very strange talk. If anyone has followed the Talking Heads, you know what I'm talking about, right? This is before your bill passed, Earl. And so we go through this whole thing. And the first person comes up, looks very agitated, and says, I have a very hard question for you, from the person from the Brookings Institution. You do not have a bike rack in front of that building of yours on Massachusetts Avenue. So I basically said, okay, by tomorrow morning we'll have a bike rack, and everyone sort of calmed down. Took a little bit longer, but they were right. A couple stats, because of the Brookings Institution, we love facts. In 1983, nearly half of young Americans had a driver's license. Today it's 29%. When people live within a mile of work, nearly 40% walk or bike in 2009. That's up from 25% in 1995. Same for if they live within a mile of errands. Okay, these are profound shifts in a very, very short period of time, and I think we are at the beginning of something that's going to be even more dramatic over time, and that's because the big trends and the big forces are with this movement. First trend is the decline in household size. I know this is not what anyone in this room really thinks about, but at the Brookings Institution, right, we file demographics. In 1900, 4.6 people per household. In 1950, 3.38. I'm not sure who the 0.38 was. 2010, 2.5. It just keeps going down. The bulk of the growth in this country, partly because of aging, partly because of people delaying getting married, partly because of people having less children, right, is that their households will be smaller. And when households are smaller, people think differently about where they live and what kind of community they basically want to join. What your movement represents is essentially a reflection and a reinforcement of what I would call cityness, right? Density, proximity, the integration of uses, the kind of neighborhoods we used to build in this country 100 years ago, a mashup, right, of eds and meds and entrepreneurs and techies and artists and companies and cyclists, right? Because when you have that kind of density and when you have that kind of proximity, synergies happen. We begin to mix ideas and innovate. The most profound change in business location today, if we went to Research Triangle in North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham, the quintessential science park built in the United States, where every corporation was separate from every other corporation, right? Because the thought was, in a Cold War kind of era, we need to invent our ideas in these secluded campuses, protect our intellectual property. That has completely changed today in sector after sector, cluster after cluster. The notion of open innovation, the notion of networks, and the notion of people living close to where they work. So if you go to Research Triangle today, what you'll find is the quintessential science park urbanizing, putting in bike lanes, putting in housing, God forbid, near companies, right? The way, again, we used to build neighborhoods. One last thought. We need to repair an economy that went completely off track before the recession, because all we did was worship at the altar of consumption and home buying and literally shopping, and we were addicted to debt. We forgot that what makes an economy great is to innovate, yes, but produce as well. And I'm so glad you brought up manufacturing, because I think what this movement represents, because of your commitment to quality place, is also a commitment to a sound and sensible growth model. And that growth model must mean, yes, idea generation, but also must fundamentally mean making things again. Last point, if we went to Detroit, if we went to Detroit today, a city of 138 square miles, that the height of American prosperity post-war was 2 million people, that now is about 700,000 and is about to go into emergency financial management. We can go to Midtown Detroit, and right next to the College of Creative Studies is Shinola sorry to bring up a competitor, but or maybe a collaborator. But there is a bike manufacturer literally in the central part of Detroit, right? That is the future of America, right? We are going back to the future. We're going back to the future in the way we design our communities, and we're going back to the future by understanding this fundamental interplay of production and innovation. And you may not think about your movement as really at the vanguard of that, but that's what you are. So I come here, partly because Jeanette told me to, but she's very persuasive. If you're going to put bike lanes on Prospect Park West, you better be persuasive. But partly just to celebrate what this movement represents, because I think this fundamentally represents the future of our country. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Come on around. So Jeanette, you brought up Prospect Park West first. A couple of other people have mentioned it. You were in the thick of that fight 2 years ago when you talked at the Bike Summit last. What are the lessons learned and what are the outcomes of that, without all the gory details? What are the lessons the city's learned and the bike communities learned from that fight over the bike lanes on Prospect Park West?
Well, I think one of the lessons learned was pointed out by Secretary LaHood, who talked about how the people a lot of times are ahead of the papers and the editorial writers. And we certainly saw that with Prospect Park West, which was a bike lane, probably the world's most famous bike lane at this point, that was requested by the community, that had an issue that they wanted to address about cycling safety and mobility. And as a result, working with the community and with the approval of all the local community board folk, we moved forward with it. And, a couple of local people didn't like it, which happens from time to time in New York. But in this case, there were some powerful interests that didn't like it, and so but the bottom line is that what we saw is that in poll after poll after poll, New Yorkers like their bike lanes. There were 7 polls taken between July 2011 and August 2012. All of them, by a majority, big support of bike lanes. 74% of bike share. I mean, really, the people are way ahead of the reporters on this. And so I think this bike lash was really dramatized because it's a great way to sell papers also. Some of you may have experienced this in your own communities. But it's working. I mean, the streets are safer. They're safer than they've been in 100 years. We've seen a doubling of people riding their bikes. And I talked about the economic development benefits. So, I mean, it's great for cities. You can sort of ignore them at your risk, I think. And I think there's a reason why our bike lanes are polling better than our mayoral candidates.
That's good. Bruce, I was a little troubled by your remarks. You suggested that the forces of demography and the economy were making these changes, and that it wasn't us. How should we ride that wave? You say we're in the vanguard. What should we be doing over the next few years to really take advantage of that position in the vanguard?
Well, let me apologize first. I mean, because obviously people here are doing some remarkable things. It's always helpful to do remarkable things when you're on a wave, right? I mean, so all I was basically trying to say is the future is with you. You just got here a little quicker than everyone else. And, at the Brookings Institution, this is when you have to lower your voice. I mean, you really do want to understand the profound forces that are shaping any particular generation. And I think what we're experiencing in the United States, and we don't talk about this enough, frankly, but the Great Recession was our Great Depression, right? It was the first time we had had an economic downturn of this monumental sort of level. And once you have an effect like this, there is no going back. Right? It is a period of time where essentially you have to recalibrate and restructure. These things are happening, the bike movement, right? The rise of cities, the rise of density, the rediscovery of how density interplays with innovation, right? They're all happening at the same time. I think we'll look back at this period, frankly, and we'll think about it as a time when the United States went through a brutal period, because that's what it is for many, many people in this country, but came out of it stronger because we went back to fundamentals. So the big forces really do matter. If I was here 30 years ago talking about those household sizes were a lot bigger, and suburbanization and Science Park, the bike movement would be up against some big forces. But right now, you are riding a wave. And the key is to how do you get to that 5%? Or how do we begin to sort of aspire to that kind of radical shift in the way we live our lives, the way we get from place to place? Because ultimately, if we do achieve that, I think that's reflective of and reinforcing of a very prosperous, very productive, very sustainable economy.
John, what are your dealers telling you about that? When people walk into their stores and what are they asking for? What's their expectation? What's their hope in their community? And what are they asking for in terms of the stuff that they want?
Well, I think you have, you talk about the things that are happening from the Brookings Institution.
Sorry about that.
Nice. Got it right.
And, you're seeing these demographic shifts, and bike shops are seeing more people in the cities who want to ride their bikes in the cities. And not only that, but these people want safe places to ride. And that's the key, is how do you link up their love of cycling with their desire to have safe places to ride? Because you go back to what Secretary LaHood said, is if we really want to change America, we're going to need an army of advocates. I mean, 750 people in this room has proven it's gotten us a long way. But if we really want to change America, we're going to need a lot more. And if we can connect those people who are coming into the bike shops, who want to ride their bikes for transportation, to get to the sporting event, to go out to dinner, if we can get them to also ask their local leaders for those facilities, things will change very quickly.
And Jeanette, you've given cities through the NACTO guide the playbook to do that. How's that working? What are cities telling you that they want? How are they receiving it? It seems to us like kind of a game changer, that it's really given a lot of cities the permission to do the stuff that they just haven't been able to or felt they've been able to do for years.
Yes, well, you've been part of the process there. And we heard from a lot of cities that they had wanted to make some changes to their streets and incorporate and build out a cycling network, but that the national design guidance wasn't really there. That, you know, the MUTCD, that the AASHTO Green Book were not helpful in that. And, you know, we did discover that when you look at the national standards, I talked a little bit about this afternoon, you know, we're dealing with national standards that were built, you know, that came out 50 years ago. And, you know, standards from 50 years ago, you know, that were used to build the interstate system are not great for metropolitan areas. And so we responded to that and came up with a very detailed guidebook so that everybody can understand exactly how to build out, you know, bike lanes, protected lanes, you know, how to deal with the engineering of it. And I think it's made a big difference because a lot of cities don't have the wherewithal to go up against, you know, some of the traditional engineers that may have been there for 50 years and that are used to doing things a certain way. And so having actually the toolkit to address some status quo thinking when we really need to adapt our streets, build them for the 21st century, that giving them the playbook to actually get that done is important. And I might add that this playbook was endorsed by Secretary Ray LaHood. If you go to the NACTO website, you'll see a big picture of Ray LaHood with his face next to the NACTO guidebook. It had nothing to do with our photo ops, but it was a nice outcome. And I think it's really important. We've got the second edition that's coming out. It's available. I encourage all of you that are interested in building out a strong network to take a look at it. But there's no going back. Communities are demanding this change. They want this change. Businesses are increasingly looking for this. And so, you know, unless you really want to be left behind, I think that it's important that communities have that ability to incorporate this very, actually mainstream form of transportation into their streets.
I'm glad you didn't pick on any small Iowa towns this evening compared
I'm
to...
sorry.
The most, you know, this is, you're on home territory here, so everything's friendly, but the most difficult question I have for you, I get what you're saying about cities. What about the suburbs? What do we do about the suburbs to change the game in suburban America? Clearly, cities are getting it. Mayors of big cities are getting it, as you've described. But what about the suburbs? How do we change the thing there?
Frankly, I think, in some respects, the bigger movement in the United States is not the recovery of cities. It's the urbanization of suburbs. I mean, if we took Metro out today to Bethesda or to Arlington or out to Silver Spring, Maryland, you would see urban-style density, at least for the United States, in these places, right? And look, the bulk of our country lives in suburbs. The bulk of our employment is in suburbs. And that's why I brought up Research Triangle. Because when Research Triangle basically decides that it's going to urbanize, it has basically sent an enormous signal, essentially, to all of suburban America, and I'm talking business now, that this is what it's going to take to compete for talented workers in this century. And the reason they did that was because what they began to see were firms going into downtown Durham and downtown Raleigh and downtown Chapel Hill, and they began to say to themselves, You know, we had a great model, a good run from 1950 to 2010. But if you're thinking 2010 to 2050, 2060, we better get with it. So I think what we're describing is really for metropolitan America, not just for urban America. And it will require, because we've sprawled out so far and we've decentralized so much, it's going to require some dramatic change in the American landscape. But it's already happening. The market and the consumers are demanding that. And you know, the people in this room are doing the political work necessary to remake your streets and remake your places.
Jeanette, you see that process underway in New York and the more suburban boroughs and outside of Brooklyn and
she doesn't leave the city. I mean,
it's like she can't breathe or something.
Yeah, it's just like those cyclists that are contributing to pollution, right? What is that about, really? Anyway, yes.
John, any thoughts on the suburbs? You don't have to.
I think if you win in the cities, you will win in the suburbs. And I think it was at the Bike Summit a few years ago. The mayor of Louisville was here, and he talked about all the things that are happening in Louisville, and everyone was kind of shocked, like, really? And when you got to the root cause of why he was so excited about cycling is he had been to Colorado and he had seen what had happened in Boulder and he had seen a lot of bike facilities and he thought, I'm going to take that back to Louisville. And when people see bike sharing in downtown DC and then they go out to Bethesda or if they go to Chattanooga or if they go to, you know, wherever they're going, Kansas City, it spreads. And if you win in the cities, I think you'll win in the suburbs.
I was actually handed a letter from the current new mayor of Louisville, not so new, today. They're back in the game. They want to get back to that position that they had when everyone was talking about them at the Bike Summit 5-6 years ago. Louisville, where are you? I know you're here. There you go.
And apparently Kentucky is also me.
So in front of you, for each of you, there's a book about Thomas Jefferson called The Art of Power, which I hope you will read and think of the Bike Summit every time you open the pages. What's our, for us, what's the art of our power? What's our strongest arrow in the quiver, as you mentioned, Jeanette? What's your final message for us, for this audience, to ride the wave, to have the most impact in the next couple of days in Washington, D.C., but then beyond that as we go back to our communities and into the years ahead?
Small question. The arc of power. You know, everybody in this room has made, you know, the transformation in their cities happen. And so you have incredible power. And, you know, we've been able to do what we've been able to do in New York City because of the kind of advocacy that comes from people like you in this room. I think that, though, it's important, you know, we all try to make the strongest possible case for cycling. And I think there's a strong case to be made on the safety side. And we've talked about the safety in numbers idea. You know, the more people that are cycling, the safer your streets are. And I think that's been very important. And I think the health case is very important, and climate change is very important. But I also think that, you know, when we've gone through the issues that we've dealt with in New York City, the business case for cycling, I think, is an extraordinarily important one. And we've been able to show it on the macro level in the sense that, you know, people and companies can move anywhere today. And they're moving in places that have a lot of options for how you get around. And cycling is an incredibly attractive option. And people want to be around a city where they can pick up a bike and go. And so that's at the micro level. So you've got this, you know, national competition, global competition between cities. And I think that's important. But as important now, we're actually able to show what happens at the local level. So what happens on a street that has a protected bike lane on it? What's happening in terms of commercial vacancies? What happens in terms of retail sales? And so, again, continuing to make that case, it's about health, it's about the future of the planet, it's about safety, but it's also good business sense. And I think that's an important way for us to continue to make that case going forward.
John?
I think the two things would be to really deal with reality as to where we are as a nation. We've made a lot of progress in 13 years. We have a long way to go. Even you go to our best cities, we got a long way to go. So I think not being satisfied with where we're at. And the second thing, which I think is really important, is everybody has a multiplier effect. Is if you take a look at our own family here, and let's say in the United States there's 4,500 or 5,000 bicycle retailers. If you really ask the leading advocates in the country, how many of those retailers are really involved? The answer would be 300. There's 4,200 people in the business who really aren't engaged. And then if you take a look at suppliers and you say, how many suppliers are there? And take a number, and let's say there's 100, there's 20 who are really engaged, really out there working it. And to me, we've got to engage the industry, we've got to engage retailers, and for the 750 people who are here, get your friends involved, because it's a great cause, and this is a way that everybody here can leave a legacy.
Bruce, I love the fact that you went straight to the index to look at the book.
I'm
look
not
at the
a big.
citations.
I have to tell you, I'm not a big fan of Thomas Jefferson, but that's okay. And this is terrible to say, but I'm a huge fan of Alexander Hamilton. And
if only I had known.
Because if this guy was in charge, we'd all still be living in somewhere other. But in any event, he said some really nasty things about cities, and I thought I'd find the quote and read it, but it's terrible. He must have been talking about France. But in any event, this is an odd thing I'm going to say when you're all in Washington, D.C., but I think everyone here will understand it. I mean, no one in this room, particularly from the biking movement and what you've achieved, is waiting for the regs from Washington, D.C., right? I mean, I think what you have invented is a new circuitry of innovation in the United States. You prove it in one place, and it spreads virally across the country. And Washington, D.C. really now has to be in service of that, right? I mean, they didn't start the movement. They've been basically obstructing anything for quite some time. And we're now in a period, as Earl knows, of essentially drift and dysfunction that is really quite remarkable in the history of our republic. So my message to you is, have a good time in Washington, D.C., spend money, it's good for the economy, all the rest of it. But go home and make change, because that's where change happens circa 2013 in the United States.
Well, on that note, I want to thank all three of you for participating, for joining us this evening, and for helping make the Bike Summit of 2013 a great event. We're looking forward to all the activities tomorrow. We've got a full program, a busy day. Starts at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, breakfast beforehand. The mayor is speaking. Congressman Blumenauer is speaking. We've got a great lineup for you. There's an alliance party at the RFD, which is not even a block from the entrance to the hotel, I believe. So go over and find out who the leading advocates in the country are, and have a great time, and we'll see you back here bright and early tomorrow morning. Thank you all again.